Begin to the Mishnah on the Pedic, new Pedic here, the 7th Pedic on Daf Lamed Beis. Zog the Heilige Mishnah, Eilu Nemarin B'chol Lashon. The following can be said in any language. Parsha Sotah, the Parsha of the Sotah, when the Kohen says to the woman before she drinks, as we'll see in the Gemara, all the details of what he has to tell her. Vidui Meiser, the confession for Meisers. This is once in 3 years. A person has to empty out his house from all various different Meisers that he hasn't given yet. And then in the 4th year and in the 7th year, he says a vidui. It's not really a confession, even though it's called a vidui, but he basically says that he's given all the Meisers, biarti HaKodesh, and you get the brachas for giving all the Meisers. That's the halacha vidui Meisers. Okay. Then Kriya Shema, saying Kriya Shema v'dei, Tefillah, davening, berachas hamazon, benching, b'shvuos ha'edus. When a person swears that he doesn't know a testimony that someone is asking him to testify about, b'shvuos ha'pekadon, or a person that had a pekadon, a deposit in his possession, and he denies that he has it, and he has to swear about this, could also be said in any language. Now, ve'elu na'amar b'lashon HaKodesh, but the following have to be said specifically in Lashon HaKodesh. Mikra bikurim, when a person says the psukim that you read and announce when you bring the bikurim. V'chalitze, by chalitze, so there's things that the man and the woman, the yavam and the yavama both have to say, so they have to be said in Lashon HaKodesh. Brachos u'klalos, these are the brachos, the blessings and the curses that were said when Yidden entered into Eretz Yisrael. It's the Gemara, the Mishnah here, and then the Gemara will describe when Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael by Har Grizim and Har Eval. There were brachas and klalos. Birchas Kayanim as well in Lashon Kodesh. Birchas Kayan Gadol, the bracha of the Kayan Gadol. This is on Yom Kippur when the Kayan Gadol does his Aveda, and then he reads from the Sefer Torah, and there are brachas that he says. It all has to be in Lashon Kodesh. Uparshas HaMelech, the parsha that the king reads. This is in the year of Hakol when the Melech reads from the Sefer Torah. Uparshas Egla Arufa, the parsha of Egla Arufa, which is also read when a person is found not alive, and then you have to bring an egla. As we'll see later, there'll be a whole pedic. There'll be a big discussion about all the details of egla rufa. Umeshuach mochama b'shah shemedaber ela'am. The halacha of meshuach mochama, a person that's anointed and designated to speak to the Yidden when they go out into the war. And he also has to speak to them dafke in Hebrew, in Lashon Kodesh. Sagt the Mishnah mikra bikurim keitzad. What is the source? The word keitzad here means what is the source that bikurim but said has to be said in Lashon Kodesh. Because it says there, Va'anisa va'amarta lefnei Hashem v'lekecha. The term Va'anisa, you should say, but what does Va'anisa here mean? You should answer and say, then there's a pasuk further that says, Va'onu halavim va'amru. And this is the pasuk that it says by the brachas and klalis, by Har Grizim and Har Eval. So there it says, Va'onu halavim, that the Levim answer. So Mala alone b'Lashon HaKodesh, just like there, they have to say it in Lashon Kodesh. As we'll see in the Gemara will prove over there that it's in Lashon Kodesh. Avkan b'Lashon HaKodesh. So too over here, by Bikurim, you have to say the Psukim in Lashon Kodesh. Chalitze keitzad. Chalitze, what's the source that it has to be in Lashon Kodesh? Also, the same kind of Gzeirah, because it says by Chalitze v'onsa v'amra, the woman answers and says, v'onu halavim. So we learn out the v'onsa from the v'onu by the Levim, by the brachas and the klalis. Mala halom b'Lashon HaKodesh, just like there's in Lashon Kodesh. Avkan b'Lashon HaKodesh. Here too, it's in Lashon Kodesh. Rabbi Yehuda says you don't need a Gzeirah Shava. You can see it here by the psukim that it says by the mitzvah of Chalitza, because the pasuk says va'ansa va'omra kacha. She answers and says as follows. The word kacha is extra, so that means acha toimar b'Lashon hazeh, that she must say it like this, exactly in these words, in the language that the Torah says it in. Brachas v'klolis keitzad. The Mishnah brought here about these brachas and klolas that was said when Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael. How exactly did this take place? So it's very interesting that the Mishnah speaks about this, and the Mishnah is so ma'irach on the subject, even though it's something in the past, and it's not even relevant in halacha anymore today. But this is actually one of the major sources for other things that have to be said in Lashon Kodesh. So we're comparing to this. So the Mishnah discusses how exactly it happened. Kivish Avri Yisrael Yard. When Yidden passed the Yarden, Har Grizim and Har Eval, and they came to Har Grizim and Har Eval, 2 mountains that were in the place of Shemrein. Shebetzat Shechem, which is near Shechem, Shebe'etzel Eloine Moira, which is in or by Eloine Moira. And the pasuk that it says there, Shenema Halohema Be'ever Ayardim V'Goymer, they are on the other side of the Yarden. So the pasuk actually describes afterwards in the same pasuk, Eitzel Eloine Moira. It doesn't say clearly in Shechem, but it says Eloine Moira. But Ma Elam Moira Ha'amala Halon Shechem, just like Elam Moira that it says further on in a different place is Shechem, Af Elam Moira Ha'amakan Shechem. So to the Elam Moira that it says over here, so it refers to Shechem. So where do we find that? Did I skip something over here? Skip the line? I skipped something over here. Okay. Well, so first the Gemara brings, the Mishnah brings the pasuk that it says when Yidden crossed into Eretz Yisrael, Ever Yarden, and in that pasuk it mentions that it's Elam Moira. But then there's another pasuk when Avram comes into Eretz Yisrael. The pasuk says Vayaver Avram ba'aretz ad mekayim Shechem ad Elam Moira. So here it says both. By Avram it says it's Shechem and it's Elam Moira. So my Elam Moira Amala Alon Shechem, just like the Elam Moira by Avram Shechem, Af Elam Moira Amakan Shechem. So to here the Elam Moira that it says when you didn't come into Eretz Yisrael, this is also by Shechem. Now what happened exactly? Shisha Shvatim, 6 of the Shvatim, Olu L'Roish Har Grizim, went on to Har Grizim. Shisha Shvatim Olu L'Roish Har Evel, and then 6 of the Shvatim went on to Har Evel. As we've seen in the Gemara exactly which Shvatim. V'Kainim v'Leviyim, but the Kainim and the Leviyim, v'Ha'arain, and also the Arain, Aimdim Lamata, were at the bottom in between these two mountains in the valley, V'Emtza in the middle. HaKainim Makifim es Arain. So in the center was the Arain, and then the Kainim surrounded this Arain, v'Leviyim es HaKainim. And the Leviyim surrounded the Kainim, and V'Chol Yisrael Mikan Mikan. The rest of the Yidden, 6 of the Shvatim, and the other 6 Shvatim were on both sides in the mountains. Shenemar, as it says, V'chol Yisrael, Uzkeino, V'shoitra, V'shoiftav, Oimdim, Mizeh, Mizeh, La'arein. They stand on both sides, and the Arein is in the center. V'goymer. Hofchu pneim klapi har grizim. So everyone, the Kainim, the Levim, they turned their face towards Har Grizim, Upaschu bebracha, and they began to announce the brachas that it says in the Psukim. Baruch ha'ish asher lo yaseh pesel masecha. So this is the bracha for a person that does not make an avodah zareh. And then ve'elu ve'elu oinin amen. All the Yidden on both sides, on both mountains, responded amen to this. Then hafchu pneim klapi Har Evel. They all turned to the other side, to the mountain, to Har Evel. Upaschu beklala, and they announced what it says in the pasuk, the curse. Areish asher yaseh pesel masecha. Cursed is the man that makes a pesel masecha. And ve'elu ve'elu oinin amen. And everyone on both mountains answered amen. Until they finished saying and announcing all the brachas and klalos that are mentioned in the pasuk. Following this, they brought these massive rocks that they had brought with them from when they crossed the Yarden. So the Yidden brought massive rocks with them. And from these rocks they built a mizbeach, and it was actually built on Har Evel. The sadu besid, and they plastered it. They plastered it with plaster. And v'kosvolov, and they wrote on this massive mizbeach, it's called Divrei HaTorah, the entire Torah b'shivim lashon, in 70 languages. Some say it means literally, they wrote the entire Torah in 70 languages, these must have been massive rocks, or it means that they wrote all the mitzvahs, all the Taryag mitzvahs, in all 70 languages. Shene'amar, it says, Bar Heitib, it should be written well explained, which means 70 languages. But after this, for not Louis Avonim, they disassembled these rocks from there, and then they went back to the place where they were. The pasuk says that they were in Gilgal, as Rashi brings there, and they brought these rocks with them to the place Gilgal, and there they put together these rocks again. That's the story of Grizim and Har Evel. The Gemara is going to go through all the details about this whole entire event and this whole story. Sagt the Gemara, Parsha Sotah Minola. What is the source of what it said in the Mishnah, the Parsha of Sotah? When the Kohen speaks to the woman, he can speak to her in any language. The pasuk says, the Kohen says to this woman, and this is actually extra pasuk it already said before that he speaks to her. So from this we learn, he speaks to her in whatever language she'll understand. Tana Rabbanon, in Abraisa, we learn more details about what the Kohen says to the woman. We had already part of this before in the Gemara, but here it adds more details that the Kohen has to speak to the woman about. Mashmi and Isa, we let her know b'chol lashon, in every language she shamas, that she understands. Al mahi shaisa, for what is she drinking? The Gemara will soon explain what that means. And then also mahi sheisa, what exactly it is she's drinking. Ubamehi sheisa, with what is she drinking? Alma nitmis, how it is that she became tamei. Ubamei nitmis, and with what she became tamei. What do all these details mean? Alma sheisa, for what is she drinking? Al iske kinu istira, because of this whole incident that happened there. Her husband had warned her, and she went, and she was still secluded with this man. Ubamehi sheisa, with what is she going to be drinking these waters? B'mekida shocheres, with this vessel, earthenware vessel, a very, very plain and not good quality of a vessel. And this is unlike the vessels that she used to serve this man, with fancy, nice vessels. Alma nitmis, how is it, what caused that she became tameh? Al iske schoik v'yaldis, because of her childish and irresponsible behavior that brought this. Ubamei nitmis, and how did she become tameh? In what way did it happen? Whether it was b'shaygig, or b'mezid, did it happen b'shaygig, or did it happen? In other words, she wasn't aware. What was going on? B'mezid, did it happen intentionally? Ba'onis, was it against her will? Or was it willingly? So the Kohen also speaks to her about this. How did the tumah happen? So the Gemara asks, "Kol kach lama." This last point over here. Why do we have to say to her that the waters over here will determine what happened to her, if it was b'shaygig or b'mezid or so on? So Rashi says the other details mentioned before are all being said to her, so that all the women that are there should hear about what she did and what's going on with her, in order that they should learn a lesson, not to follow in her footsteps. But the last detail of Shegig, Mezid, Einis, Ratzin, why is that being said? So that people shouldn't come and say about the waters that that can't have its effect. Look, it may have not worked. Because if she was actually a Einis or a Shegig, then the waters will not have its negative effect on her. So therefore the Kohen has to say that the waters will determine if this was a Einis or this was a Ratzin or Shegig Gemezid, and the waters will only have an effect if it was Bemezid and Beratzin. Vidui Meiser, then the Mishnah says that Vidui Meiser has to be said, or could be said, that is, the confession with the Meiser, it's once in 3 years, could be said even in any language. Min Allah, from where do I learn this? The Pasuk says, Va'amarta lefnei Hashem alekecha. You say in front of Hashem, Biyarti HaKodesh min habayis, I have cleaned out, I have gotten rid of all of the Meisers in my home. V'yalef amira misaita. We learn out the term amira that the pasuk says here, v'amarta, from the word that it says by the Sotah, v'amar. That it could be in every language, that in every language that the Kohen can speak. Amalei Rav Zvid Labaye, so Rav Zvid asks Abaye about this, but v'leilev amira milaviyim. Why don't we learn out the term Amira that it says here from the term Amira that it says by the Levium, by the story of the Levium when they were by Har Grizim and Har Evel. So over there it also says the term Va'amru Levium. So maybe we should learn from there. So the Mala Alon B'Lashon Kodesh, and just like there it must be in Lashon Kodesh, Avkan B'Lashon HaKodesh. By the video of the Meiser, maybe it also has to be Davka in Lashon Kodesh. And says the Gemara, Donin Amira Gredese, Ma'amira Gredese. We learn out the term Amira that it says here from Sotah, where it just says the term Amira, and we don't learn out from the Levium where there the Torah says both the term Va'anisa and it also says both Lashonis. It says side the word Va'ansa, or actually Va'anu Halavim, that is Va'anu Halavim Ve'amru. So because it says both terms Aniya and Amira, we don't learn out from there to this pasuk Va'amarta lefnei Hashem lekecha. Tanya, we learned in the Brayso, Rav Shimon Mechai says, Adam oimish v'chai. We see in the Torah that a person that is saying his praise, he says it b'kol namuch. So he says it with a regular voice, or with a low voice. But a gnusai, when he talks about something which is embarrassing to him, b'kol ram, there the Torah says that he should say it loud and announce it. Where do we see this? Shvachai b'kol namuch. He's saying his praise, and that he says in a regular or low voice. Min vidui maha meiser. I see this from the confession by Meiser. The Torah says what he has to say and confess, and the Torah does not say that he should raise his voice. Gnusai b'koram, but the psukim that you say when you bring b'kurim, and here you're saying something which is actually embarrassing to you, and that you say loud, and you learn that min mikra b'kurim, from b'kurim. So Rashi brings by b'kurim, you begin saying over there regarding Arami Oivedavi, that Arami wanted to kill Yaakov Avinu, or wanted to kill our forefathers. Okay, so what are we saying over here? Who are we speaking about? So Rashi says that's considered to be our embarrassment, because after all, we do come from Lavan. So therefore, this kind of embarrassment, the Torah is saying to say loud. So I see that embarrassing, you have to be ready to announce it loud. So the Gemara asks on this, a genusai, because is it true that a person should be saying and speaking about his embarrassing things loud? But why did Chazal institute that davening Shmoneh Esrei you say low? Not to embarrass a person that does an Aveda. So if he's davening Shmoneh Esrei and he's confessing and he wants to confess Avedas that he has, so it shouldn't be done loud, that people shouldn't hear. And the proof of this is, where do we see that we don't want to embarrass this person? When it comes to the place where the chatas and the oila is shechted in the azar and the Beis Hamikdash, the Torah doesn't make a distinction between them. They're both shechted on the north, on the tzafon of the azara, so people shouldn't see that this person is bringing a chatas. So I see over here that gnos, embarrassment, is not something that should be announced loud, and not something that should be noticed by everyone. So the Gemara answers, Loitei mignusai. So you're right, don't read that Rabbi Shimon Yechi says that our embarrassment we say loud. Elaim, rather read tzarei, that a person talks about his pain and suffering, that's something that he talks about loud. Right? So in other words, over here, when we talk about Arami Oividavi, and that the tzaris that Yidden had from a Lavan, and then from Mitzrayim, that's tsar, pain, suffering, that's something that you announce loud. As we learned also in a Bryce in another case, that a person should announce his suffering loud. When it comes to a Mitzayre, he announces the fact that he's Tomei. What does this mean? He has to notify and let everyone know his suffering. And so like this, everyone will come and daven. Hashem should have mercy upon him. And it says, anyone that has anything that happens to him, any pain and suffering that he's experiencing, he should let people know about this. And so like this, people will come and beg mercy for him. Going back to the statement mentioned before, why was it instituted to daven Shmoneh Esrei quiet? Not to embarrass those that do Avedas, and they might confess in their davening, so we want that to be done quietly. As we see, the Torah does not distinguish between the place where the chatas is shechted and the oila is shechted. But the Gemara asks, is there no distinction between the chatas and the oila? But there are the bloods that are then spread on the mizbeach, and there is a difference where the bloods are spread on the mizbeach. Dam chatas lamayla. The blood of the chatas is spread above that line that went across the mizbeach, and the dam oila lamata, and the dam oila is spread below the line, below the chut hasikra on the mizbeach. So we see that the Torah does allow for a distinction that you could notice between the chatas and the oila. So the Gemara answers, Hasam kainu diyoda. This distinction above that line or below that line is not noticeable for everyone to see. The kayin sees this, the kayin knows. But as far as the place of where the carbon is shechted, that's something everyone notices. Over there, it's in the same place, in the tzafon of the azara. Fragt the Gemara, bad v'ha'ike chatos nekeve and oila zachar. There's another major distinction. The carbon chatos is brought from a female, and the oila is brought from a male. And this is something people could see, the distinction in the animal. Answers the Gemara, Hasa mechasya ba'alya. But over there, there's the tail that covers, and therefore you can't necessarily see the difference if it's a zachar or an akeva. So no, it's not noticeable. That's true. Kafsa, that is. Tainach, this is understood if we're talking about a female lamb. So over here, there's a tail, and you can't see the difference between a zachar and an akeva. But but a goat, which could also be brought as a carbon, and here there's no tail, so what are you going to say? Here you could notice the difference. Answers the Gemara, well, this person has the choice. This person brought a goat, and he is causing this embarrassment to himself. He could have brought a lamb, and he's bringing a goat, so that's something that kind of an embarrassment that he causes to himself. But what's with the goat that has to be brought? A female goat that has to be brought for a person that did an Aveda of a desire b'sheigeg. It must be a goat. What should we say here? So this is something which is embarrassing because you can see that it's a female. And says the Gemara, you're right, that's different. Hasam nichse v'nezel. By the chatos of Avodah Zarah, which is a more severe Aveda, over here we want this person to be more embarrassed. Ki heichid and a chapale, in order for him to have the atonement for this level of a sin, this Aveda of Avodah Zarah. The Mishnah said, Kriya Shema. So in our Mishnah it said that Kriya Shema was one of the things that could be said in any language. So here the Gemara brings in a brayso an argument about this. So first the source, Minalon, what's the source that it can be said in any language? Shema Yisrael. So Shema Yisrael means listen. In every language that you could listen. It's not specifically in Lashon Kodesh. Tan Rabbanon, in a brayso we learned Kriya Shema Kiksava. Kriya Shema has to be said in Lashon Kodesh the way it's written in the Torah. Divrei Rebbe, this is Rebbe's opinion. The Chachamim say, B'chol Lashon. It can be said in any language. My time with the Rebbe. What's Rebbe's source that it must be said in Lashon Kodesh? On Makra, the pasuk says, V'hayu. It says, V'hayu advarim eile. What does V'hayu mean? B'hav yason yu. As is, it should be. Say it in the language as it's written in the Torah. V'Rabbanon. On the other hand, the source of the Rabbanon, as we brought before, was on Makra, the pasuk says, Shema. Shema means B'chol Lashon shata shemeya. Every language that you can hear, it could be said in. Now, V'Rabbanon, fragt the Gemara, according to the Rabbanon, Haksiv V'hayu, the pasuk does say V'hayu. What do they learn out from the V'hayu, which is mashma that it has to be as is in Lashon Kodesh? And says the Gemara, Hahu Shaloi Yikre'enu L'mafreya. The V'hayu is coming to teach me something else. That you have to say the parsha in the order. You shouldn't say the words out of order. Ve'Rebbe, according to Rebbe, that learns from V'hayu, that learns from V'hayu that has to be in Lashon Kodesh. From where does he learn that it should not be said out of order? Nafkele, he learns it midvarim. The pasuk could have said dvarim, and it says hadvarim. V'hayu hadvarim. Hadvarim means these words as is. Now, on the other hand, Rabbanon, that is, according to the Rabbanon, dvarim hadvarim le'mashmalahu. They don't learn anything from the word hadvarim. They don't consider it to be extra to learn anything out from this. Okay, now on the other hand, Ve'Rebbe Nami, according to Rebbe, Haksiv Shema, the pasuk says Shema, and they don't learn from there that it can be said in any language, so what do they learn from Shema? And says the Gemara, Omi Bayalei, Rebbe learns out from Shema, Lahashmiya, La'azncha, Mashata Maitze, Mipicha. When you say Shema, you have to say it loud enough that you have to actually hear the words that are coming out of your mouth. Rabbanan Savri La, Rabbanan's opinion is, Command Amma, like the opinion that says, HaKoyre Shema. One that reads Shema, and he didn't hear with his ears what he's saying. Yatsa, so he's Yaitza, which would mean that Minatayr is Yaitza. Possibly the Rabbanan still hold it. The Rabbanan, you should say it loud enough, but Minatayr is Yaitza. Now the Gemara says something else that we could learn out from both Rebbe and the Rabbanan's opinion. Shall we say, Kosav Rebbe, that it's Rebbe's opinion that Kol HaTorah, when it comes to the entire Torah, and Rashi says this refers to when a person reads in Shul, Kriyas HaTorah in Shul, regarding always when you read, you can read in any language from the Torah. Why would you say this is Rebbe's opinion? If you're going to say that according to Rebbe, you always have to read from the Torah in Lashon HaKodesh. So V'hayu, the cause of Rachmana Lamali. Why does the Torah have to write, especially reading Shema, that V'hayu, that it should be as is, that has to be said in Lashon Kodesh? If all Torah always has to be read in Lashon Kodesh. And Rashi over here says, as I mentioned, that when it speaks about Kol HaTorah, it refers to the Kriyas HaTorah and Shul. Taisus asks on this that Kriyas HaTorah was instituted much later, and it's not even Min HaTorah B'chlal. So how could the Gemara ask regarding reading Shema from the Kriyas HaTorah and Shul if that's not Min HaTorah at all? So Taisus has a different shot that Kol HaTorah B'chol Lashon Amr refers to other times that you have to read psukim, which are some of the things that were brought before, B'negei to Maisres and Chalitza and so on. But according to Rashi, some say that when Rashi said Kriyas HaTorah in the Shul, he was referring to a Kriyas HaTorah which is Min HaTorah, and that is the Kriya of Parsha Zocher, which is Min HaTorah. So the Gemara answers, no, there's no raya from here. It's derech. I would still need a special pasuk for Shema that it has to be in Lashon Kodesh, even if Kriyas HaTorah always has to be in Lashon Kodesh. Mishum d'chsiv Shema, because over here by Kriyas Shema the pasuk also says Shema. So therefore, I would think maybe we should darshan like the Rabbanan actually darshan. That from Shema I learn that you can say it in whatever language you can hear. So that's why it has to specially say no V'hayu that it has to be as is in Lashon Kodesh. And the reverse, the Gemara says the same thing. Shall we say that the Rabbanon that say that I learn out from Shema, that it can be said in every language, the Kriya Shema that is, so should I say that the Rabbanon's opinion is that Kol HaTorah Kula, but Lashon Kodesh Nemra, that in Kol HaTorah Kula, according to Rashi, when you read always in the Torah, so it could be said in every language. If always when you read from the Torah, it can be said in every language, why do I have to have a special pasuk regarding Shema to say that it should be said in Lashon Kodesh? So the Gemara, that is that it could be said in every language. If anyways, Kriyas HaTorah could always be said in every language. So the Gemara answers, I still need a special pasuk, because on the other hand, it says over here, V'hayu. Rebbe learns from V'hayu that it must be said in Lashon Kodesh. That I would think that maybe it must be said in Lashon Kodesh. So therefore, Rabbanan need a special word, Shema, to teach me that it can be said in any language.